Hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel discussion, the Republic of Moldova ahead of fateful elections organized by the Southeast Europe Association. My name is Christian Hagemann, and I'm Executive Director of the Southeast Europe Association, and I'm very much looking forward to today's discussion. It was about 4 years ago when Maia Sandu managed to turn Moldovan politics upside down by first winning the presidential elections against incumbent President Dodon, and after this also taking control of parliament with her PAS party winning an absolute majority of seats. At least in Southeast Europe, this is to my knowledge the strongest mandate for reform a party and also a particular person ever received in an election. And to me, it was the more astonishing that Sandu was campaigning on rule of law and Europeanization, which are not necessarily bread and butter issues that must concern citizens in dire economic straits like those in Moldova. So 4 years on, and the country faces both the bitter reality of being a neighbor of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, as well as the positive turn of events as the country became a candidate for EU membership, which could not be expected back in 2020. So today we are in a very interesting position to look back at these fateful 4 years for the country and discuss what might come out of the elections this Sunday, which factors will have an impact on this. And we will have a great panel to discuss this. And this great panel will be introduced in a minute by our moderator. So I only have the pleasure to introduce our moderator to you, who is Matti Dollbaum. He's Assistant Professor of Comparative Politics at the University of Fribourg in Switzerland. His research is focusing on parties, contentious politics, and social movements in Eastern and Western Europe, with a special focus on the long-term interactions between protest and politics across different regime types. He's not only acting at the University of Fribourg, but he's also affiliated with the LMU in Munich, so just across the street from our offices here, where he leads the research group on mobilization and representation in post-Soviet Eastern Europe. And this research group looks at the functioning of political parties under patronal conditions in different regime types, including also the case of the Party of Action and Solidarity in Moldova, which is going to be one of the issues today. So I welcome our panel, I welcome you, Matti, and I hand over to you for the discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christian, for this warm welcome. Thanks to the Southeast Europe Association for organizing this panel. And I don't really want to steal any time from what's coming. So we all know it was a fascinating, I think, electoral campaign that's largely behind us now. An immensely important vote that's coming, or two, in fact, that's coming on this Sunday. We have that before us, and we want to go deep inside all of that. We want also to talk about the path to this moment and possible scenarios for development from here. And we do this, as Christian has said, with an excellent panel of high-profile speakers. I'm very lucky indeed to have them. We have Anna Mihailov, Country Director for Moldova at the Friedrich-Ebert Foundation. We have Iulian Groza, Executive Director of the Institute for European Policies and Reforms. And we have Natalia Stercul, Executive Director as well of the Foreign Policy Association of the Republic of Moldova. And with this warm welcome to our three excellent panelists, I just have a few words to say about the format. We will be discussing amongst the four of us for roughly 60 minutes, and then I will open the floor for questions from the audience. And the good thing about this Zoom format is that you can already start writing your questions in the Q&A format while we're still discussing. So you see at the bottom of your screen this Q&A button. You can press it and you can type your question in as you go. And then you can also upvote questions from other people. And that makes also the task for me as a moderator easier to pick the questions that are most interesting to the audience, and that I will do. But let's first start with a quick question to the three of us. So looking at the opinion polls that have been conducted before this electoral campaign, I'm specifically looking at one of the International Republican Institute conducted this summer. You might see a bit of a positive trend, I think, in a country that's been sort of plagued by continuous problem of emigration of its youngest and brightest. It seems that among the young generation, the mood is, relatively speaking, the best among generations. And so my question to the three of you is, can you confirm this impression? And what else is the sort of the first and most important impression you get from the current atmosphere in terms of political mood in Moldova, just as a quick starter for everybody? Maybe we start with Anna Mihailov. Sorry, I think you have to unmute yourself. There we go.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Jan, for this question. Well, the atmosphere is not that simple, you know, and that is given the propaganda, the unprecedented security situation that Moldova has been facing. The enthusiasm, I think, is not that high. There was a fear, you know, that this referendum, you know, might not meet the threshold. However, we can see, so today, so we have waited for the public opinion barometer, which is one of the most important opinion polls in Moldova, and actually it looks quite optimistic. Even though, you know, it's very difficult to believe in the results, given the this really unprecedented situation in Moldova. Looking at looking at the mood and we can see that like 81% so have already declared that they will participate in the elections, which is really a very high participation rate. Even if some 63% will turn up, according to another poll, is already a very good result. So this yields, you know, to some optimism in the Moldovan society ahead of the presidential and referendum this Sunday.
Thank you, Anna. Maybe Iulian, do you want to follow up?
Yes, I think what we observe now in Moldova these days, a really high stakes momentum. Part of the referendum, part of the presidential elections, which of course is important to set out, you know, the political leadership for the country for the next years. We also have the referendum, and the referendum is indeed raising a lot of stakes in terms of the future of Moldova. Today, Moldova is a candidate country, has very clear ambition to be ready to join the European Union by 2030. The public support for EU accession has been increased over the last years, in particular in the last 2 years. We have seen a tendency of increased support. This support of the citizens now has the opportunity to be reflected into a very concrete democratic policy action that was not something that Moldovan citizens were used to. In fact, the referendum which we will have on Sunday is a constitutional referendum. It's not a consultative, so it will have immediate action. The results of this referendum will be immediate. Will have immediate action. If positive, we will include with our vote as citizens in the constitution a new chapter, a new title, and will ensure the strategic objective for Moldova to join the European Union. Of course, it's important because we are having this ambition agenda to join the European Union. We have a great opportunity now offered by the European Union with starting accession negotiations, sending very clear signals that the EU is open for Moldova to join the European Union, supporting Moldova on this track. Just last week, we have seen the President of the European Commission, von der Leyen, being in Chisinau and presenting a new, unprecedented growth plan for Moldova, economic growth plan for Moldova, which was designed for Western Balkan countries. It was not planned for countries like Moldova and Ukraine when the budget was approved back many years ago, the budget of the European Union. But the European Union has found possibilities to identify resources and to plan this. So the reality is that, unfortunately, over 33 years of our independence, despite the fact that the majority of the citizens have connected their lives with, and future lives and present with the European Union, either by choosing to work and live and study in the European Union, or looking at the European Union as a space of stability, prosperity, the problem is that the politicians in Moldova failed to build up a consensus around this objective. Our society has been for too long divided. I think for the first 30 years, we have been quite divided in the sense where to go. Before the war started, actually about 50% were looking towards the European Union. The other 50% were looking back to Russia. And this has been sourced by politicians, by geopolitical confrontations, by a lot of disinformation. Things changed after the war started. I mean, the war of Russia and Ukraine didn't only, change the perspectives of the EU towards our region, becoming more open to give out the perspective and welcome us in the European Union, but also it affected the security environment in the region, in Europe in general, and globally. It also changed perceptions for the citizens. So it is a great opportunity for us as citizens, to do what our politicians fail to do, to build up a consensus around this track, and support and ask and encourage politicians, whoever they are, in government, in opposition, on the right wing, on the left wing, on the center, but encourage these politicians to become more accountable, more responsible for the fate of this country and serve national interests, not the interests of Russia. Because unfortunately, what I have to say, the majority of the presidential candidates, we have 11 presidential candidates, the majority of them have opted not to encourage, not to vote, opted to ignore the referendum, which is at least for me discouraging. So if only 2 candidates registered with their political parties for campaigning for yes, there is a strong no campaign sourced by Shore. His affiliates and parties have not been, directly linked with them, have not been accepted to the race because of illegal activities linked to the illegal financing of this political campaign. But unfortunately, there are other candidates which are linked to him who have their own agenda. But the point is that you have presidential candidates who want to become presidents of this country, and they are not certain about the future of this country and the momentum we are in now. So that is very much discouraging. And I hope that we are able as citizens in this referendum to send a clear signal to them, to send a clear signal to us as a majority, to make sure that we all understand the importance of the momentum, and to send very clear signal to Europe and to all over the world, because the voice and the choices we'll have made on Sunday will impact not only our future as Moldova, but also it will impact a lot the European integration process across Europe. It will be great signals for other countries who are aspiring to join the European Union in Western Balkans or Ukraine or Georgia. Everything we will decide now will very much determine not only our future, but also the future of Europe in terms of the enlargement for the next years to come. And what most important element is that the environment in which we are, it's unprecedented in terms of the hybrid warfare that Russia is waging in Moldova, undermining the process. So it's very much about, a critical moment, a crossroads, like I just mentioned in one of my papers written. We are at crossroads. It's about choosing, the future, European future, or falling back into Russian influence, where we have been for some time years ago.
Thank you, Iulian. Let me give the word to Natalia and not only ask about the mood, but follow up from what you've just said and ask you what what do you observe in terms of Russia's actions, how Russia tries to influence what's happening on the discursive level, perhaps also on other levels? What are the measures that are actually being taken by Russia that can be observed? And do you think, are they being successful with it or not? That would be my question to you, Natalia.
Thank you, Jan. In my opinion, if you talk about the Moldova's upcoming elections and referendum on 20 October, it will be a new test for European future of our country and democratic development. And I really hope that we have this will from the part of the civil society, citizens, to make a correctly choice. I think that this elections campaign are very important and have some specific issues. First of all, this election campaign has become a record terms of the number of candidates for all the years of the state's independence. In total, the Central Electoral Commission of Moldova registered 11 candidates for the country's highest leadership post. It's first time we have so many candidates, so many willingness to be the head of the country. At the same time, we can observe the high level of the support from the part of our European partners, including assistance, help, and at the same time restriction measures, for example, which was done these days, especially for some personalities from Gagauzia and one unity entity, Euro-Asia, Russian-based non-governmental organization whose goals is to promote Russia interest abroad, including the Republic of Moldova. Also was sanctioned its director and founder of this organization. I think it's very bright highlight the situation, complicated situation in our countries in this day, and very active and intense influence from the part of Russian Federation. Russia influence is very strong because there is a high level of the activity of the Kremlin, financial influence, information attacks with toxic narratives aimed to disrupting the referendum. At the same time, we can observe the unity of the civil society and pro-European authority. In my opinion, it's first time in the history when we can observe this unity in actions and solidarity, promoting information campaign in the different regions on the country with explanation what means referendum, why is so important to be part of this process, what means pro-vote, what means if the referendum will be blockaded. That's why I think that it's also a bright example of the democratic development processes in the Republic of Moldova at the current time. And I think it's very important for us. Also, I think that we can mention that for the first time, the ballot papers for election campaign will be available not only in Romanian and Russian languages, it was were in previous time, but also in languages of ethnic minorities, especially in Ukrainian, Gagauz, Bulgarian, and Romani. It's also very bright example that democratic processes in Republic of Moldova are developed, and this aim to combine the pro-Russian narratives, I think it's also very important in these days. Generally speaking, of course, if we talk about the polls, I can observe different examples that we have at the present time. And we can monitor the optimistic or enthusiastic views and results of this survives. But when you're talking to ordinary people, unfortunately, the situation is not so optimistic. There are a lot of fears, a lot of debts, especially when we talk about the security issues and economic competitiveness of our countries, of our country in this days. Of course, people have worries regarding the labor market, salaries, standards of life, and so on. That's why economic issues is one of the sensitive issue for our population today.
Right. Yes. Thanks for this overview. I would like to get a little bit, at least, into the detail of this election campaign, because it has seen an interesting turn in June when Igor Dodon announced that he was not going to stand for president, but instead presented somebody who probably not everybody knew at this point, Alexander Stoyanov, a former prosecutor general who was going to be, according to Dodon, a unified opposition candidate. That hasn't happened because there are more than 2 candidates registered, right? And also more than one with a pro-Russian position. But I would really like to know your expertise about why this happened. What do you think was the goal behind this? And do you think that Dodon was actually successful in reaching whatever goal he had? So this is really a puzzle for me. And I just invite any of you who thinks they know more, which is probably everybody, to give their interpretation of this event.
Oh, maybe I can start, but actually, if I can follow on your previous questions, because I think it's really very important, and that's about propaganda, hybrid attack, and how Russia is trying to influence the elections in Moldova, because we have some fresh examples which illustrate very clearly the way Russia works to prevent the referendum from happening and to influence the election results. It's a fresh just news today that the law enforcement officers, after conducting 88 raids in the Balts, the second biggest town in Moldova, identified a group of people, like about 100 young people who were trained this summer in Russia, in a Russian suburb, in how to behave in protests, how to conduct protests, how to use even weapons, non-lethal weapons. So this is a kind of clear example how Russia is trying to interfere with the elections. And another example is last week, again, the law enforcement officers announced about the identification of a network, like 130,000 Moldovan people who have benefited from financial support from Russia. That is money channeled via Russian banks through MIR cards. This is another example of the scale. And only in September, like about 15 million USD dollars was transferred via this method. And the authorities speak about actually tenfold an amount pumped by Russia to influence the Moldovan elections this year. And earlier in spring, again, the Moldovan police stopped 100 people coming from a conference in Moscow, and each person had like 10,000, up to 10,000 US dollars on them. So this is just to understand, you know, what's happening in Moldova. So we've had propaganda since Moldovan independence, but it really intensified with the Russian invasion in Ukraine, and it's getting worse and worse. And the instruments are really very diverse, from leaflets to online TV to troll farms, and it seems that the Russian propaganda is several steps ahead. The efforts of the Moldovan authorities to counteract these attacks. And now getting back to your question on Stoyanoglu, yes, he's the candidate put forward by the socialists. It was kind of unexpected, that he would be the candidate, even though there were discussions and there were previous attempts to identify a joint opposition candidate. Those attempts failed, but then Dodon surprised us, putting forward his candidature for the presidential elections. He didn't do it himself because of his anti-rating in Moldova, but probably because of the signals he got from Russia not to do that. We can see that, Stoyanoglu is kind of a controversial figure. His former prosecutor general, he acted as prosecutor in Chisinau after graduation, then as prosecutor in Gagauzia. He's a Gagauz by ethnic origin. He was appointed, he won actually the contest for the prosecutor general in 2019 under Dodon presidency. But then he was removed. Actually, he was suspended first at the recommendation of a so-called extra evaluation commission. Actually, he was subject to a kind of evaluation, and following that evaluation, the commission recommended the president to remove him. So Maia Sandu removed Stoyanoglu in 2022. He has about 6 criminal cases. Some of them have been closed. He won at the European Court for Human Rights for being for having violated the right to appeal and fair trial when he was removed from office. And on this background, so he's kind of a controversial figure. He's detested by some people, but respected by others, and we can see it clearly in the opinion polls. We can quote today 3 opinion polls, and in 3 of them, he comes second or third. In today's one, actually, he comes third. But it's very important. It's very interesting, when you look at the level of trust. He comes second after Maia Sandu, and Renato Osatu, who comes second in the polls, by the result he would score in the presidential elections, comes only 6th. So there is a kind of a big margin, for the results to change. To change this tight margin of Renato Osatu and Stoyanoglu. Renato Osatu is another surprise, big surprise. He was kind of low profile. He kept low profile in the last period, but he became very active, and he could repeat his success that he had in the local elections in both. As a mayor, he had 2 terms of mayor, an incomplete the second one. However, given he's really very populistic, and he's appealing to Moldovan population. He's also popular abroad. Maia Sandu, pro-European forces, really hope, that the diaspora will save the situation this time, as it did last time. But we could see that Renato Osati in the last presidential elections came third in the diaspora after Dodon. So he has some support in the diaspora, and he can capitalize on that. Unlike Stoyanoglu, for example, as you've already mentioned, he's an unknown figure. He enjoys 22% of support, public support, and that's a lot given the fact that he's not known, so he has some potential to grow. So it depends very much on who gets into the second round, whether it's Renato Osati or Dodon, and Renato Osati or Stoyanoglu, because yeah, if Stoyanoglu gets into the second round, so. Despite the analysis, of the sociologists that Maia Sandu will make it, will win the elections, this is disputable. There was a question in the opinion poll which was presented today about the second choice. So Stoyanoglu comes first as the second choice. So this is maybe my colleagues would like to add to this question as well.
Yes, please. If you would like to add some intrigue on the presidential race, this would be the time.
I think Anna already very well explained, and Natalia as well. Just to mention that what it is clear is that there is quite a big distance between the incumbent president, Sandu, and the rest of the two candidates that are competing for the second place. Now, according to the polls, Mr. Stoyanoglu and Mr. Osati, they now are indicated, in the polls, they're indicated around 10%. So they're competing against Sandu, that is credited now with over 25 to 30%, depending on the poll. So there is a big distance between the first and second. And third, some of the polls also indicate, the second round, and I think Anna already mentioned, what is clear is that in the second round, yes, there may be a tight battle between the incumbent president and the number two, who will come, who will be there. Osati or Stoyanoglu, according to the poll. But it is clear that still she would secure her second mandate again, but we don't know. It's still uncertain. We will have elections. We don't know what will be the participation rate, if people will be mobilized enough, and if diaspora will be very active in voting. I think that is important factor, because in previous presidential elections, diaspora had a huge contribution to the overall result of the vote, in particular in the second round, but also in the first round. So diaspora, I think, is an important, actor in this defining, who will be the next president, and what will be the results of the referendum. So I think the two aspects that I want just to add to the debate. Thank you.
I want to add here that, first of all, Moldova is a parliamentary republic. The elected president can be actively engaged in foreign policy, the government and domestic policy. If we talk about the promotion of the European integration, in this case, Maia Sandu, due to Maia Sandu, we have a lot of, first of all, pragmatic and open foreign policy, contact with European leaders, European countries, and this possibility to be part of the European family. But if we talk about the candidates for these presidential elections, we can see that among these 11 candidates, only 2 are pro-European. And of course, Mr. Stoyanoglu is a potential leader if we talk about the Russian influence. And of course, Kremlin wants to see him with the aim to retain the power and influence in this region. That's why I think that with Mr. Stoyanoglu, it will be more easy to do it. So we can see this big struggle between pro-Russian and pro-European forces. But majorities, if we talk about the election campaign, are presenting like as pro-Russian, and Stoyanoglu is a potential leader among them. Thank you.
Right, thanks. I want to use this. So first of all, I want to remind the audience of the Q&A button. I see that there's already one contribution there. Please use it actively. And then I want to use this opportunity to shift the conversation a little bit towards the future beyond, sort of beyond the immediate elections that are coming. And I want to do this by pointing to this shadow report published in July this year on the implementation of EU recommendations in various policy fields, and which actually two of the institutions represented here were also involved in drafting. So I'm just quoting one line from this report, which says that the most important progress with regard to the recommendations by the EU, the most important progress was recorded on the security dimension, while the slowest progress on the freedom of expression dimension, right? And I wonder if there's kind of a logic here, because it seems to be a dilemma, right? On the one hand, of course, it's absolutely necessary and vital to root out the threats coming from Russia. On the other hand, the means to do that can, of course, interfere with basic freedoms of expression, association, political campaigning, etc. Right? So I would like to present the audience with the question of how can this dilemma be solved in a way that, you know, that kind of both keeps Russian influence out and at the same time does not, you know, violate too much the recommendations coming from the EU in terms of, you know, securing freedom of expression, etc. So maybe start again with Anna.
Well, first of all, that was a shadow report produced by 4 partner organizations, including FES and the IPRE. It was an assessment of the progress made by the Moldovan government in the implementation of the European Commission recommendations. It follows a certain methodology, so it actually looks only at the recommendations of the European Commission and the progress of the Moldovan government. And it is indeed, you know, security area looks quite good. And that's because of the methodology. You know, we don't judge in general about the security situation, but we are looking at the steps the Moldovan government made in order to fulfill those recommendations, to put in place institutions, to develop the strategies. And so looking at these indicators, this area looks quite good. When it comes to freedom of expression, we can see that the progress, I mean, Moldova has made the least progress. And this is about the level of protection of journalists' activity in the face of attacks, and also low level of transparency of ownership and final beneficiaries of mass media. So this is exactly, you know, the measures or the problems, the challenges, you know, of Moldovan government and of the modest result assessed by the independent team of experts who worked on this report.
Maybe I'll just add few aspects which I believe are important to understand the context in which we are. And I think, Jan, you mentioned, I mean, very well the core conclusions of our report. You know, this balance between security and freedom of information is very much reflecting the overall geopolitical challenges we have in the region. Moldova is not currently, you know, conventionally attacked by Russia, but Russia is waging a hybrid warfare. So the task for the authorities in Moldova is to strike a perfect balance between security and freedom. Not an easy task for a country that has been for years exposed to corruption, to vulnerable institutions, Russia dependency, to pro-Russian proxies that have been, meddling into internal affairs and try to stop Moldova from advancing towards reforms. We've heard a lot of promises from various governments in Moldova that they will strive, they will do whatever it takes for, fighting corruption, promoting freedoms, and so on and so forth. But that's also always a challenge, in particular in the last year. I think in the last years after the war started. So I think that is an element which have to be understood. And when talking about freedom of expression, the challenge for us is how to make sure that we secure our information space from disinformation activities, which are diverse, complex, sophisticated. They're not, anymore, and you know it very well, in Germany as well. If you look at how Russia is waging its disinformation activities, it's very much influencing, political processes also in other countries, not only in Moldova. So it's not easy for a country that has been vulnerable for many years, to strike the perfect balance between, ensuring security and the application of the highest standards of freedom and speech and rule of law and everything else. But I think the good news is that there is some very good progress in the sense of securing our information space. Beyond very difficult, very controversial decisions that the government had to take by administrative measures, to stop broadcasting of Russian TV companies, majority of them owned by Russian proxies. For many years, they transferred ownership without clear beneficiary presentation from Mr. Plakhatnyuk to Mr. Dodon and then to Mr. Shor. So that was the case where 65 to 78% of the broadcasting in Moldova, private broadcasting, was owned by kleptocrats. All of them left the country after 2021. In fact, after 2019, they already started to leave, but they still use the strains. They used the media for that. So especially when the war started, we have seen how disinformation works. So it didn't affect it only, the overall, perceptions of the citizens, but it started, to use very much the media to change perceptions, to spread fear, to disinform about the war reality, and so on and so forth. So on that flank, with these decisions, which have been criticized also by various organizations in Moldova, internationally as well. But that is a decision that the government had to assume to handle with it and take accountability for it. And I think the good news is today that we are in a situation where, when we look at traditional media, the situation is much more transparent, much more clear, and less exposed to unclear, beneficiaries linked to kleptocrats or to Russia. But all that have moved to online now. A lot has moved to online. Not only platforms or internet, social media. In particular, Telegram, TikTok has been very much used for that. And here is a space where we need to work more together, including with our partners and allies in the EU and across Atlantic. And I think there was some years that we were struggling to make sure that the social platforms are also accountable for the content they monitor and the place that they offer for various sectors. It's only this week we have heard from Meta. Well, there were some decisions made before of closing some social accounts, and but this week, after a letter that was written by a congressman from US to Zuckerberg to increase the efficiency of the Meta platform to fight disinformation accounts of persons who are on the sanctions list of the US. Only after that, we have seen more and more actions. Even Telegram started to be cooperative. Maybe that was a coincidence that they started to become more cooperative after Mr. Durov was arrested in France, in Paris, and more cooperative, and started to have more cooperative policies with governments in terms of responding to this type of thing. So this is something in particularly difficult, and challenging, because Telegram, for example, as Anna has mentioned at the beginning, is used as a platform to conduct criminal activities and vote buying of people, using a network to mobilize voters, to pay them. On 130,000 citizens in Moldova have been subject to this type of activities by sure through Russian banks. So you understand the amplitude of the problems we face. And here, what it will count is it will count very much the cooperation. I mean, inside the country, we have a Stratcom Center established 1 year ago that has a task to assemble efforts of government, private sector, media, civil society, to make sure that we effectively fight the disinformation and strategically communicate about the issues and create resilience against Russia disinformation activities. Very much supported also by the EU, because we have a EU partnership mission established in Moldova for 1.5 years. Very useful actor that helps Moldova to build up resilience. So things are changing, things are improving, and I think what will count now very much to see how what we should do more to further on one hand to increase our resilience, and the other hand to fight Russia hybrid warfare, and more importantly to advance the reform agenda. The good news when you look at the accession process with the UN, the work we do is monitoring how government is complying with commitments and recommendations coming, conditions, benchmarks coming from the European Commission, is that we have a clear track record in terms of things what we need to do as a country. Commission, as we now are going through screening, identifies together with Moldovan government what are the benchmarks to start negotiations and to close negotiations on various chapters, and it will be even more scrutiny over the efficiency of these reform actions by the government, and it will provide all of us more predictability and stability in terms of the effort, as well as accountability, because it's beyond the fact that we have this reform agenda, which is very clear. We also get support from the European Union as a potential member state of the European Union. So all that is conditioned to the process, and these tools, I think, would help us together with the European Union to advance and improve the situation in various areas. And I think in the last years, we have seen some improvements when you talk about corruption perception index, when you talk about good governance indexes, even the Reporters Without Borders are still keeping Moldova in the top 30, basically, countries in terms of freedom of press. Also, financial institutions like Fitch, for example, have moved to the Moldova to B+ class, stable outlook, which of course is encouraging. And all that put together, I think, provides a lot of opportunities to have a more sustainable, more structured, on one hand, reform agenda, but at the same time, opportunity to increase our resilience, because those who are exposed to disinformation activities, vote buying, illegal buying, other type of illegal activities done by Russia proxies in Moldova, they are majority of them vulnerable peoples in communities which are also more distant, in communities where we as a country for the last 30 years failed to interact much better with them. I mean, talking about Gagauzia, in spite of the fact that Gagauzia, for example, autonomy, has a population about 100,000, which is roughly about 5% of the total population, benefited the most from the EU support and the government allocations for infrastructure, for schools, for everything. Despite that, still about 85 to 90% of the population in the region are looking towards Russia and say that Russia is the #1 donor and the #1 trading partner, while the reality is totally different. So this is something that we need to work on much more. And after the referendum, I think we need to continue all the work we started, I think, in the last 6 years, also in the 6 months, to be more active and going in the countryside. And Natalia, me, Anna, every one of us, there is a lot of civil society organizations, media that are going outside Chisinau, talking to communities in various languages that we explain the processes in which we are, the challenges we have, the opportunities we have with the European Union. So this effort should continue, and we should continue to to limit the disparities in the society, not only economic disparities, but also in terms of a level of income and understanding and awareness about people. I mentioned at the beginning that before the war, we had about 50 to 50 kind of division. Today, we have about 2/3 who are more like looking towards more development objectives, joining the European Union, and about 30 are still Moldovan citizens that are kind of connecting themselves more with the Russian space. So this, disparity should be addressed. We need to make sure that we have an inclusive agenda as a country, as a civil society, as media, as governments. And I think this is where we get a lot of attention and support from all partners, including the European Union. And Germany is one of the examples. We have many projects implemented with the support of the German Foreign Office to go, to work with the civil society, to work with minorities, to work with ethnic groups, to empower communities on the local level, on top of the investments which are coming from all, EU, but also from the member states as well. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Iulian. Speaking of disparities that you mentioned, I would like to, so we spoke about the electoral campaign, we spoke about Russian interference and what's being done against that. And I would like to move the discussion now to question of social cohesion, if you will. So we know from experience that referenda can have sort of a divisive effect, right? If we just look at the Brexit campaign, Leave, Remain, a very substantial policy decision that was being followed by that. It was a very close decision then that some regretted later on as they saw what the result was. But sort of referenda have a tendency to be divisive, right? And so my question would be, what do you think the government or any other organization could and should do to ensure that this is not a divisive outcome, whatever the outcome is going to be, right? You mentioned, Iulian, sort of consensus is necessary. My question would be how to do that. Is there anything you might want to advise the government on doing? Maybe start with Natalia.
Thank you very much. I think that our government does a lot of, especially for social cohesion, solidarity, unity of the civil society, ordinary people, was organized so many public consultation, especially our president had a lot of meetings with population of different categories and from different fields with the aim to create this conditions for more unity among society. Of course, our society is divided. Of course, we have a lot of problems in this sense, especially this permanent fight between pro-Russian and pro-European forces. Of course, our society maybe are not so developed in this sense for social cohesion and unition. But I can say that we need to work with this, more attention with these specific regions which really created a lot of problematic issues. In spite they are not a majority, but they can provoke and can create unstable situation, including protest and so on, using their possibilities that they have from the part of the Russian Federation. That's why it's very important issues. And when we talk about the work, it not might be okay when, for example, in Gagauzia, our government has the representative office, but if you talk with representatives of ONG, of non-governmental organization of Gagauzia, they talk that practically permanent this office is closed. It means that we need to more attention for this population who really need more information, more attention, because they really can create a lot of provocative actions. And if we return to your previous question, I absolutely agree with my colleagues. It's not so easy to ensure the security of information space and resilience in our country. This I can mention that we can see a lot of provocative action from the part of the Russian Federation, including propaganda, disinformation, fake news, manipulation, black PR, especially with anti-Western and anti-European narratives. And of course, from my opinion, it was strictly necessary to prevent these measures and all these restriction measures which were taken from the part of our authorities was very important. But if we talk about criticism, about the disappointments, about the negative messages, all these are possible. I don't think, I didn't observe that it was closed, and we don't have this possibility. We absolutely free can explain our own opinion regarding the mistakes of our government or mistake of our parliament and so on. I cannot say that we have so many problems with freedom of expression. Maybe only with this direction to obtain, to ensure the security of the information space from the part of the Russian Federation and Russian influence. That's why when we talk about the unity and solidarity, it's also an important issue, because without restrictive measures, it's important to unite the population. You can promote a lot of positive messages about the EU, but the mentality which has, for example, Russian-speaking population, they have pro-Russian mentality, and you cannot change it without some specific measures and restrictions and creation new positive narratives about the European future of the Republic of Moldova, about the arguments that why it's so important to be part with and in line with civilization world. Thank you.
If I may add here, speaking about social cohesion, I think it's very important. Political class has a really very important role to play here. And if I look back 4 years ago, during the electoral campaign, the previous electoral campaign, we could see that the Moldovan society was more united in a way. So, and it was actually Maia Sandu, which managed in a way to unite the society around such important goals as building the rule of law, fighting against corruption, ensuring an independent justice system. And those were things that united the people. These were the things that in a way secured the victory of Maia Sandu and the PAS ruling party. Looking at what happened now, I think the Moldovan society has never been as divided as today. And then partially, I think this is the responsibility of the political class, including where they decided about this referendum, which is important in a way, but it wasn't crucial at this moment in time. So it was put forward only by one party. The decision was made before launching the public consultations, before consulting at least the pro-European parties or other parties. Referendum needs a broad political consensus and societal consensus, this time the time was not allowed, for that. So the time was not enough. So we can see the consequences. We can see that the pro-European parties are quite absent, so they're not campaigning, even though they registered their participation in the referendum with the option yes. They are really very apathic, so they don't campaign. So it's the civil society which replaced this role. And speaking about the ruling party, the decision, actually unilateral decision, Maia Sandu's decision, to organize this referendum without consulting the pro-European parties, because during the consultations, so the pro-European parties suggested that this referendum be organized during the next parliamentary elections, which is in about 6 months, so as to put all parties on an equal footing. That was not accepted. Again, the pro-European opposition parties suggested to sign a so-called Snagov Pact based on the Romanian examples. That was not accepted either. And this, in a way, contributed, to this division in the society. This is a mood which has been also transferred to the people. I'm looking forward to the results of the referendum, of course, like everybody does. Looking at opinion polls, at least it seems optimistic, even though the mood was not very. So I can't feel that, among my acquaintances and the people I communicate with, just because so they really criticize this political selfishness of the politicians. Because a referendum should have been, this is an important exercise and a very responsible exercise, and this should have been consulted with the political parties and with the society in order to contribute to this, to build this social cohesion. Natalia also mentioned about Gagauzia. Yeah, the situation, if you speak about security situation, I think it's worse now in Gagauzia than in Transnistria, and partially this is because the government lost touch, with this region. They didn't even have a candidate in the local elections. That was for the first time that the ruling party doesn't have candidates for elections. So this is partially the situation of social cohesion, and so this division, the Moldovan society lies with the politicians.
I just want still to insist on my line, because I think it complements what Natalia and Anna has mentioned. An observation. There is a very strong Russian narrative which is promoted and used in Moldova by Russian proxies as well, to try to project an image that Moldova is divided. It's like, a barricaded country, that you have half of the country that is fighting the other one. And it may be like that, maybe that case for some times, for many years. But what we have seen in the last years, that has been changed. So you don't have a clear division in the society, like 50 to 50 fights, right? In terms of geopolitical objectives, I don't talk about. I mean, we are a very peaceful, society, non-conflictual. This is also reflects a lot also our, attitudes towards neutrality. We still, in spite of the war in Ukraine, we still have about 70% of the citizens who do not want for the country to leave neutrality. So, I mean, we're non-conflictual. I mean, even the war we had in 1992 in Transnistria region with Russia, it was not based on ethnics. It was not based on religion aspects. It was an artificial war that Russia has waged against Moldova, just like they waged it in Donbass in Ukraine, how they started the war there. And the compromise we had after the 3 months of the war with Russia in Transnistrian region, Russian army in Transnistrian region, was that we will stay neutral and Russia will leave the country. We will promise we will not join any military alliance. We will promise that we will not reunify with Romania, because that was one of the dangers for Russia at that point. And for years, we had even politicians who have been presented like unionists who would promote, Moldova to join Romania. In fact, years later, they have conspired to be good friends of Dugin and actually FSB agents that have been undermining Moldova's from internally. Those, proponents of unification with Romania, they have been actually Russian agents in Moldova who have undermined our society, trying to, create a fight on identity, on language, on geopolitics. And that was the practice for many politicians in my country, which actually divided the society. But I think the fact of the war and the prospects for Moldova to be accepted in the European Union, there are two factors that are changing the reality on the ground. Today, we don't have we have a minority basically of citizens, about 30%, that are still connected to Russian space. That's the reality. We have to admit it. But also we have a majority of the citizens, an increasing majority of the citizens that are more associating themselves with the European Union. And when to see the division, to see the differences in that aspects, you also can judge on the results of various opinion polls. Because, for example, if the question is about, are you in favor of Moldova's European aspirations and joining the European Union, then the result shows that over 60%, 63% today are pro-Europeans, basically. When they asked in a very concrete question about the referendum, will you vote yes or no in the referendum question about revising Mao constitution to include the European integration goal there, then the answer is different. It's about 50%. So it's about a 10% difference from the aspirations of the citizens and the real act of making that decision. And this 10% are very much influenced by ambivalent politicians, by disinformation, by attempts by a very strong boycott campaign from politicians in Moldova that have been projecting themselves as pro-Europeans as well. I mean, we have seen a campaign that has been done in Moldova recently. It's called Not Now campaign. So you have a no campaign, you have not now campaign, and a campaign not to go to the referendum, boycott the referendum. So all these three campaigns are actually about for Moldova not to make sure that our citizens, who are majority are supportive, they would vote for yes, and not to reach the threshold, because if you don't reach the threshold of 1/3, the referendum will not pass, and that will give the opportunity for Russian proxies, Russian factions in Moldova to say that, look, 70% of Moldovan citizens didn't even bother to vote in a referendum about the EU. So why we should care about that? Why you should care about that? You have only 1/3 of Moldovans who really wanted to join the European Union. So playing with figures, playing with numbers, playing with narratives, creating this element of division of society, this is something which is happening in the country. And I think it's not very healthy to perpetrate this narrative of a divided society, like a confrontational society. It's not the case, because even if you talk about Gagauzia, Gagauzia population represents about 100%, 100,000 of citizens, and represents, in fact, about 60,000 of voters. It's less than 2% from the total number of voters in the country. This is another narrative that we have seen promoted by pro-Russian factions in Moldova and Russia, very active in Moldova. Regionalization of Moldova, and actually that was the agenda of Shore for some time, to try to regionalize, to win cities, to win regions, and then to create an image of confrontation of the region against the central government, separatism, division, different orientations, exploitation of that. I think that is another narrative which we have seen very actively promoted by Russia, again with the task to stop us from to have a better clarity in the society. Regionalization. It's not very, in reality, this regionalization is not there to the level that one would think about that. I mean, we have seen a report from International Crisis Group that have been criticized, heavily criticized by a lot of fellow think tankers in Moldova, not only, about attempting to promote the same types of narratives, which I think is very much dangerous to play in the Russian hands in that sense. And I think that is my opinion. I mean, I may not be, not everyone would agree with this one, but I think this is a pattern that we have seen for some time. Divide et impera. This is a policy that worked probably for different empires to win hearts and minds of people, to divide and win, and to confront. So I think the ability of our society to deal with this challenge is indeed about social cohesion. It's indeed about reaching out to communities. It's about making effort to offer the possibility to ethnic groups that speak Russian language and do not speak other language, or Gagauzians that actually they do not speak Gagauz language as they speak Russian more. But I think the recent 2 years, what we have seen, that as government started really to put in place a program to teach Romanian language to ethnic groups, to adults, not only in schools but to adults, you have seen a spike of willingness from people from Transnistria region, from Gagauzia, from Chisinau, from northern part of the country. Well, the figure is not not tremendous. I think last year it was about 15,000 people that wanted to get the course, but that is already a step forward. I think this type of policy, to reach out to communities, to talk to them, to explain them, to try to also for political parties. I mean, in Gagauzia, we don't have any pro-reform, pro-European parties which is active there. You have only pro-Russian parties there. And that is something that, for the politicians also to do. So I think I'll stop here, but I wanted to give a bit of more kind of maybe a different perspective to the topic, because I think it's very important to the debate.
Sure, thank you. And I would agree, if that's permitted, to say that perpetuating the narrative of division is itself a force to divide, but on the other hand, I also would agree with Anna, who said before that there can be more and less helpful ways to move the European integration forward, and also more and less helpful time points for this kind of referendum, perhaps. And so yes, there's I guess two sides to this, and I want to now use the opportunity to transfer our discussion to the audience, to open up for questions. And clearly we already have a few questions, and I see that, Iulian, you've already volunteered to answer one of those, but I want to first take two other questions together, and they're both in different ways deal with social groups and the benefits that they have had during the last years or not had, or the benefits that they can actually expect in the future and from European integration, right? So one centers on pensioners, how has their lives improved during the last 4 years, and the other centers on youth, and what has youth to expect from European accession or European integration. And I think this makes the transition really nicely from what we discussed before, because if you want to get people on board, I think one of the very effectful things to do is make them benefit, economically, socially, from your political agenda. So I think these questions go very nicely together and also link to what we discussed before. And so I ask anyone from the panel to jump in and try and answer.
I can start.
Yes.
If we talk about the Maia Sandu, in 2020, she has had very social-oriented program. And of course, were a lot of promises about the benefits of social life and so on. I can say that she tried everything which is possible, but unfortunately the consequences of the war in Ukraine are very complex, and country's economy was hit by it. And the opposition used this fact of economic instability. This, of course, affects of the rating of the Maia Sandu. You can observe that she tried to explain all achievements that were done according to your social-oriented program of 2020, and majority of the promises were realized. But of course, if we talk about the prices, if we talk about the inflation, the situation, economic situation is changed. That's why, of course, population have a lot of disappointments in this sense, but underlines once again that it's not question to Maia Sandu, it's more question to the government, because government try to resolve all domestic issues. And speaking about the possibility to change something, I think that, of course, we will have a lot of opportunities in this sense, but it's clear that after this round of the elections cycles, the economic situation will be the same, very difficult. That's why without additional optimistic views, but with reality options, it will be more easy to understand that, first of all, today for us it's important that we need to continue our way to European Union and to European family. That gives us a lot of opportunities and achievements in the upcoming future, but not at the present moment. We need to work a lot in this sense. Thank you.
Any additions, pensioners, youth? Doesn't look.
Well, maybe I'll just add a few things about the the programs of the candidates. Of course, Moldova is a poor country, and you can see the candidates competing, with promises related, to pensions, salaries, various allowances, programs for youth, pensions for the older people, these are promises, that can be fulfilled by presidents. Of course, this is the responsibility of the government, of the parliament, and of course, Maia Sandu was kind of lucky, to have the support of the government, of the parliament, and some of the promises were fulfilled. So this government managed to increase the minimum wage, also the pensions, despite the multiple crises that it had to face: the gas crisis, refugee crisis, the war, the pandemic. All these promises are there. So we'll see how they will go, because some of them are really unrealistic and can't be fulfilled. When it comes to the youth, so I've seen some proposals of, for example, of in Maia Sandu's program of providing the youth with a single allowance if, for example, they agree to work somewhere in the regions, because we can see an inflow of the youth to the towns, to Chisinau, but also the migration is really very high among youth and about the general population. One of the problems that Moldova is facing is the exodus of the population, and only in the last 3 years, about 300,000 people left the country. So this is a real challenge for Moldova.
Thank you. So I'm seeing that there's several questions, but I think not as many authors as there are questions. So I'm encouraging again the others who are clearly listening to please also put their questions in the chat. And while they do this, I will pass the floor to Iulian, who has, I think, volunteered to answer the question: Maia Sandu's no-show in the recent debate.
Oh, sorry, I didn't volunteer. I just didn't know how to use it.
Oh, I see. Because
I can answer to that question or other question for our anonymous s.n. listener. If you want, I can do that. I mean, I'm not a politician. I'm not a politician, but I mean, there was a question about why you don't see Sandu in debates. Well, that's the political strategy of the candidate, obviously, and there are many other candidates that don't compete. But what it is sure is that, I mean, my expectation is that, as we have seen it in the previous presidential elections, if there will be a second round for sure, she would have to debate the counter candidate, because that will be a good opportunity to define very well the differences between the candidates, and then the options for the citizens, for the voters, will be much more clear. I mean, And I would expect her to campaign in the second round for sure, if the second round will happen. Otherwise, there are, if you look at a list of candidates, yeah, you have half of the candidates who are independent. By the way, that's also a very good indicator. I mean, and today I've seen the opinion poll. Political parties in Moldova has the lowest level of trust from the citizens. And that is also reflected in presidential campaign. I mean, the majority of the candidates are independent candidates. But even Mr. Stoyanoglu is presented like independent, but in fact is promoted by Socialist Party. But the rest are independents, and you have, I don't know, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, a young politician who's just campaigning now, and he's like getting to 1%, 1.5% now. But there are others as well who have more experience, but still are somewhere at 1%. But most important is that you have also candidates that presenting themselves independent. But in fact, they operate. There are more and more indications that at least 3 candidates from those 11 that actually are proxies of Mr. Shore, and that we could have found out because of the investigation done by the journalists. It's very interesting. So, yeah, I mean, it's I'm not a politician. I don't know what is the strategy, but that's the common sense to me. That probably the debating will be happening whenever the second round is taking place. I mean, we're not like in US now, where we have 2 candidates really neck to neck and they debate, or even in other countries where you have more established democracies and more, traditional parties like Germany's, for example. Unfortunately, Moldova still has to work more to build up, political culture among communities, but more importantly, among politicians. We have over 60, I think now 70 political parties. I think only 10% of them are active. About 10% are active, and they are activated. Majority of them, they're activated during the elections, and they use like spoilers or vehicles for various kind of campaigns. So I hope I answered the question. I can go to the list of the questions if you want, but I don't want to monopolize the time because I see we have another 7 minutes left.
Yes, indeed we do. And I just want to pick up one more keyword from one of the questions, which is Transnistria, which is, you mentioned it sort of in passing, but I think there should at least be one question really dedicated to it. Unfortunately, one has to say, but I think it still plays an important role. The word itself has currently been banned there, I hear. So authorities there now don't want Transnistria to be called that way, but only by the Russian term President Maia. But so that's sort of...
Oh, you're wrong.
I'm wrong, really?
Nistrenia.
Okay, yeah, sure. But still, sort of there was a sort of a ban on the traditional use, right? And the question is, how will relations with authorities there change depending on the outcome of these 2 votes? What are your thoughts about this?
Well, I think, I mean, if you ask me, I mean, I don't think I don't think that these elections are particularly crucial for solving Transnistrian issues or integration policy. I mean, what is crucial for this process is actually the 2 factors. One, the outcome of the war in Ukraine. That's number 1. At least from the start of the war, it becomes more and more clear that economic interests are much stronger than Russia in Transnistrian region. Because the region is led by kleptocrats. It's a group of companies, sheriff. They own actually a football club that everyone should know about, that beat it, that had played in European League, and made the group famous. So they control the region, and they very much benefit from rents from the region. The region is actually kind of an offshore kind of place where they do their business, and they do not want to spare their rents with anyone. In fact, over the last 10 years, the exports from the region, they have been going to the European Union. And after the war, actually, majority of the exports are going to the rest of Moldova and to the EU as the war had started. Also, you had the border closed. I mean, Moldovan border with Ukraine closed on the segment of Transnistria region, because the region represents a key security risk for all of us. You have Russian troops there staying illegally for many years. Russia promised to leave the country in 1992 when we said that we include in our constitution the neutrality clause. They failed to comply with this commitment, even though in 1999 they promised that they will withdraw their troops. But they still are there. You have one of the biggest munitions depot in Transnistria region in Kombasna. I think one of the largest in southeastern Europe, which represents a high risk for people as well. But since the war started, what Mr. Krasnoselski did, he sent a very clear message to Ukrainians, to the rest of Moldovans, to the world, that they are not a threat to anyone. They do not want to fight with Ukraine. They do not want to be attracted in the war. They had to find a position of a kind of ambivalent position, right? And as they started to be dependent 100% in terms of trade and the inflows of goods in Transnistria region, because that's exactly what's happening. All the trade is going only through Moldovan-controlled administrative line. Exports and importation, not only exports, but also imports are now controlled by Moldova. So they're dependent. We also have a dependency in terms, for now, for electricity supply, because we buy our electricity in Kuchurgan. 75% of our electricity is bought from the Kuchurgan on a subsidized price. It's true. It's about 66 euro per megawatt, while the price on the market is over 120, 150. It also comes with the tech, in a sense that this electricity is produced on gas, which Russia is sending to Transnistria region. Only we don't buy any more Russian gas for the rest of Moldova, but it goes there. They do not pay for it, and it goes on Russian subsidies to Transnistria region now, over $10 billion now. Yeah, with all that, there is this interdependency, and actually Chisinau and Tiraspol in the last 2 years and a half did a lot of effort bilaterally from Chisinau to Tiraspol to talk and to maintain peace, stability, very pragmatical business like type of relationship, but which managed to preserve peace and stability for now, because our mediators, I mean, we have a negotiation format like 5+2, very much supported by Germany, you know, Berlin Plus principles, so the 5+2 negotiations, a lot of mediation has been done by Germany as well in this format. This doesn't work anymore for over 3 years, especially after the war started. You have 2 mediators in fight, and OSCE has been basically paralyzed by Russia as well today. And OSCE has an important monitoring role and mediation role so all the contacts are now between Chisinau and Tiraspol directly. And actually, economic component is the crucial component in terms of our integration process in the future. And European integration accession process to the EU actually provides an opportunity to amplify that benefit, and in time to create enough leverages to bridges, not only between people, because majority of the citizens in the Transnistria region, they're citizens of the Republic of Moldova. Yes, it's true. Many of them have Romanian passports, Ukrainian passports, Russian passports, but all of them are citizens of the Republic of Moldova. That happened in particular after 2014, when Moldova started to get visa-free travel from the European Union, and they helped, you know, to reintegrate the citizens at least, or to give them passports and IDs. The business as well. All the business operating in the Transnistria region is registered in the Republic of Moldova and does trade with the European Union. Well, not all of it. Some of it is used for cryptocurrency mining firms with connections to Chaika and kleptocrats close to Kremlin. Some of them are connected to Russian secret services, conducting disinformation activities, cyber attacks from the region on Moldova. That is what's happening now. But, you know, on surface, you know, there is dialogue, there is peace, stability. We understand, and so we know that they know that we know. So for now, that works until we are building up more resilience against Russian influence. And until we build up more connections in even electricity in the next 3 years, 3 high voltages interconnections will connect us with Europe, which will provide us an alternative. So until that time, we have to operate in this environment. But as I said, the outcome of the war will very much impact also how fast and how effectively we will solve our main task to reintegrate the country. And the European integration process will provide that opportunity as well. in time, but not the elections. I'm not sure the elections. And there was a question about elections there, about citizens in Transnistria region, that they can vote. Yes, citizens in Transnistria region, they can vote. There will be over 30 or 40 polling stations opened on the administrative line, so people will have to travel to that line on our controlled territory, so that they can vote, because we cannot exercise elections there. We don't have legal control over the region. I mean, candidates cannot campaign there. You cannot monitor the elections, and so on and so forth. So yeah, in 2020, we had about 30,000 citizens from Transnistria region voting. And I would say that in 2020, 21, I think the number of those who were pro-Europeans at some point were larger than the ones in some regions in the country, in Moldova. So yeah, I think we have some opportunities there, but it will very much depend on the dialogue, how it is developing, but also implications of the war and how fast and how efficient we can use the accession process and funds and investments to create leverages to further reintegrate the country through economic means.
Thanks, Iulian. I want to, because we're through with the time now, I want to give still Anna or Natalia the floor to add to this question a very final word, if one or either of you would like to, before we close off.
Yeah, I'd like to take over the question about the pensioners and if their lives have improved during the last 4 years of Sandu's presidency. Yeah, I would say it hasn't changed a lot. If you look at the opinion polls, the first concerns of the population is poverty, prices, war. Yeah, but prices and poverty, these are the kind of major concerns of the people. Yeah, and speaking about pensioners, so they have okay, the pensions have been increased, but then compared to the inflation rate and the prices, we can't see many changes. That's why that the pensioners are so vulnerable to all these bribes and so vulnerable in front of such schemes, put forward by Russia through its proxies, like Shore Party in Moldova.
Thank you, Natalia. A final word from you, if you like.
Yes. Regarding the Transnistria, I want to add that Transnistria will vote along the perimeter of the administrative border between this region and the Republic of Moldova. That's they have this possibility, and if they have willingness, they can do this. And I really hope that we make a right choice on 20 October, and I wish you success to all of us in this way.
Thank you. A very fitting final word. Let me thank all of our 3 excellent panelists once again, Anna, Mihailov, Natalia, Stercul, Iulian, Groza, for many interesting and important insights. And I hope we continue this discussion in various other formats as well, possibly including the new Moldovan Analytical Digest, which I'll have the honor to be editing, starting with the first issue in January 2025, which will also deal, of course, with the outcome of this important vote that we're facing the day after tomorrow. Thanks again to Christian and the East European Association for organizing this great round. And thanks to everybody in the audience, especially, but not only to those who asked questions. And with this, I close this debate with only 5 minutes over time. Thanks everybody again, and enjoy your evening.